Hi Leeza, can you please tell us about your book?
Absolutely. So it's called a sex book and I hope that it'll be the sort of comprehensive resource that anyone can turn to if they'd like to learn more about sexuality, sexual health, the body, pleasure. It's divided into 4 sections. One is called the body. Your genitals are normal. That's the first section. And that covers all the basics around anatomy, bodily processes, with a particular focus on the sexual and reproductive organs. It's so much stuff that we don't know, but that we should know. The next section is called sex, what you need to know long before you get naked. And in that I focus on protection, contraception, all of that, but also consent. A large chunk of that section is a detailed sort of overview of the dynamics of consent. And it ends with a section on the medical and legal framework around abortion in India, because it is good to be informed about the risks that come with sex, as well as what you can do should you find yourself in a situation where you need to deal with the consequences that perhaps you hadn't intended. And then there's a section called pleasure. Everyone deserves it. That's my favorite section of the book, and it looks at all sorts of wonderful aspects of sex and sexuality, be it self-pleasure and masturbation, orgasms, oral sex, anal sex, vaginal sex, kinks and fetishes, kissing, like the gamut of what it means to be sexual. And then the final section is called relationships, navigating sexuality together, and that looks at stuff like talking to your family about sex, what it means to be in a healthy relationship, how important sex is to a relationship. All of that's sort of more emotional and relationship related aspects of sexuality. So yeah, I've tried to cover as much as I can in this book, and I hope that anyone who reads it really enjoys it.
What's your top 3 advice for people having sex for the first time?
Remember the 3 C's: consent, contraception, and communication. If you can take all of these 3 things seriously and educate yourself about them in advance, and then make sure you do all you can to practice these, you're likely to have a good time.
What are your favorite books when it comes to learning about sex?
I'm going to give you 3. One of my favorites is called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. Another one is called The Tragedy of Heterosexuality by Jane Ward. And the third is called Cyber Sexy Rethinking Pornography by Richa Kolparte.
What do you exactly mean by decolonizing your sexuality?
You know, so many of the ideas we currently have in India, or that we still have rather, around sexuality, that sex is shameful, that women's sexuality should be controlled, that, you know, queer sexuality is unnatural or punishable. Many of these, even legally speaking, were colonial era ideas. And yet we hold on to them as if they're like Indian culture, you know, not recognizing that in fact they're Western ideas, Western colonial ideas. Section 377 was a British era law. The fact that marital rape is exempted from the rape laws, that's also a colonial era law. And yet we hold on to these bizarre ideas that, like, you know, even the preoccupation with marriage, so many of the ideas that we hold on to as if they were always ours, are in many ways tied up with colonialism, Christianity. I mean, so many forces that, you know, are external cultural influences. So that's what I mean when I say decolonize your sexuality. I mean, let's unpack some of these ideas we cling on to so as if they're like ours, you know, and recognize that they were imposed, that there was also a time when our ideas were more expansive and less oppressive perhaps, and just sort of redefine ourselves in ways that serve us instead of holding on to ideas that perhaps do more harm than good.
How do you feel about how sex is represented in popular media?
I think that for the longest time, sex was represented in this very male-gazy way in popular media. Stories were told by men for men, and that really had a sort of impacted the way sex is presented. I'm glad that slowly we're seeing a little bit more authentic representation of women's sexuality, queer sexuality, and I think we really need people, you know, from a variety of different identities behind the camera, with the pen, whatever way that the media is produced, not just in the story but telling the story. You know, for the longest time only men got to tell the stories. So the more that changes and the more inclusive the creation process becomes, the more likely the output is to be reflective of an authentic experience beyond just, you know, the male gaze.
What are your go-to sex education pages other than yours?
I am so excited to see the growing community of sex educators in India. Some of my favorite are Talk You Never Got, that's my friend Karishma. There's also Inappropriate, Aparupa. There's Team Tharani with Artika. Of course, there's Seema Anand, Dr. Varuna, Dr. Cuterus, Dr. Bombastic. I mean, there's so many wonderful creators, and we're all a little sort of community now, and I love it.
There is one particular type of content in your Instagram where you're posting text, writing text on your back. Can you please give us some context behind why you wanted to post like that or something like that?
So I find that as opposed to having text just created on Canva or something, having it written on a body part just draws people's attention in a way that I feel is somehow more impactful. It seems to elicit a response, and I also feel like the stuff I'm saying, whether it's a message about consent or about pleasure or about all of the above, you know, it does have to do with the body. So it made sense to me to place it on my body. But yeah, I think, people somehow connect with those images. I also think that like so often women's bodies are used in media as a marketing tool. It's like, she's the object of your desire as opposed to her desire being the subject of the image. And I feel like what's nice about women taking images of themselves and posting it themselves, and like the agency that one's personal social media allows one in terms of how they present themselves to the world, I like that because I feel like you're seeing me through my gaze, and that was an extension of that.
Since your entire content is on the internet already, what made you write the book?
So I started on the internet for sure, and I think my content reaches a lot of people, but it's a bit piecemeal, right? Today you get a reel about orgasms, tomorrow about condoms, day after maybe you miss the reel. So it's hard to get everything I want to say out there in 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever it is. So I think of the internet as a nice place to discover my content, and I hope some people listen and watch all of it. But I think that this makes it so much easier to get a comprehensive picture of all the things under the sex education umbrella in one place. So I wanted to create this really user-friendly resource, a one-stop shop for all the information I've been trying to share. And in many ways also, the written word allows for you to dig a bit deeper, My internet content tends to scratch the surface, and I've tried to provide a little bit more, whether it's information that's research-based or personal anecdotes. I hope that readers find stuff in this book that, the internet doesn't allow for. I'm getting like maybe 12 or 15 hours of someone's time if they read it cover to cover versus 30 seconds. And I hope that you enjoy that. For me, it was very enriching to be able to not be bound by time constraints and to say everything I want to.
Can you give us your top 3 tips to starting a podcast?
I think it helps to have a really good idea that is sustainable over a number of episodes. So think that through. And then I think the best thing is to start. So often we just sort of wait and think, you can keep perfecting an idea indefinitely. So just start, and it can be so easy to record. You can just use your phone. You don't have to wait till you have a fancy recording studio or a mic. So know that there's so much that you can just do using your own smartphone. There are apps like Anchor and things which make it really easy to publish and edit and record right from your phone. That's how I started. And I think that, you have to be patient. Audiences in the audio world are quite small in India still, but it's a growing thing. So don't be disheartened if your podcast doesn't get so many views initially. You have to just keep doing it, be in it for the long haul, and hopefully you're talking about something you're really passionate about, and so it's easy to play the long game.